face this way, so you should be okay. All right, guys. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all for coming. We are less than a month away from officially moving to small groups at the 9 o'clock service. We've been adding a lot of new people to the team, trying to get us to where we need to be so that we can get there. And when we met last time, we talked about I talked about moving us from Sunday school to small group, and I kind of talked a little bit about what that meant and what that means, but that's not, I wanted to call this meeting for us to flesh that out more about what that actually means to lead a small group. And so I'm going to talk about a lot of different concepts today. Some, and I'm not saying that you need to do all of them, because I'm going to paint like the perfect picture. And some of you will be like, yeah, let's do it. It's going to be awesome. And some of you will be like, well, I can only do like 3 of those things. And that's okay. Because what I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to let out this is the shining example of what we're going to try to do. I've also been leading small groups for 7 years. And so I understand there's lots of different, and I've led small group leaders, and then I led an actual small group myself for about 5 years. And so there's strategies and tips that I'll try to get into to kind of talk about what we're getting into. So the concept that we're using here is called lead small. That's the fancy thing there. Isn't that nice? Lead small. So lead small. And the reason why we're talking about lead small is, just as we talked about before, is that we had 52 kids at 11 a.m. service today. 9 a.m. was great. We had a 1-to-1 ratio. Yay, spring break. But we had 52 kids in there. And the thing is that it's impossible for me or for Justin or Donna, who was helping me run Crown Control, for us to know everyone. And so the classic way children's church was run, that they developed in the late 80s, that has continued on, has been, we get a whole bunch of kids in the room and we tell them about Jesus, which is, to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that model, and that's what adult service looks like as well. But what happened with adult service is that adult service also had Sunday school, and they had small groups, and then Sunday school morphed into small groups, because what we wanted to do is, instead of focusing so much on instruction, we also wanted to focus on relationship. We wanted to focus that it's important that these kids are known, and that they feel that they are known, that they know that someone knows their name, someone knows their favorite color, someone cares about who they are. And they feel that. Justin and I, we get hugs from kids almost every week, which is great. But instead of it being just one person who's the star, I want you to be the star. I want you to be the person that they're excited about going see. I'm okay I'm okay if I'm not the person that they're super excited about seeing on Sunday. If it is, great. But it's also important, it's important that the person that they feel the most love from is the person that's their small group leader, and the person that cares the most about them. So Sunday school was all about teaching kids the Bible, and we focused on Bible stories, we focused on scripture memorization, we focused on getting the information out. We just wanted them to know the stories, which is great. That's a noble goal, and we're still doing that in large group. We're still doing them. We're still giving them Bible stories. We're still getting the information out. We talked a lot about theology today. We talked about the historical accuracy and all that stuff. And so, but what's happened in the past is that Sunday school a lot of times taught something completely different than what we taught in the Sunday large group service. And what we know from child development is that kids have to hear the same thing over and over and over again. Common Core math destroyed this concept, but in math classes, they talked about drill and kill. That's why you had to, how many of y'all remember doing like 100 math problems in one hit? In first grade, I remember there was a test where we had to do 100 addition problems in less than 5 minutes, and then if you passed that, then you got to graduate to 100 subtraction problems, and then if you graduated that, then you got to do 100 mix. And it was like, it took me all year to get through that. But that was the idea. The thing is that our kids are so inundated with messages and ideas and things that they need to think about that it's so very important that we talk about the same thing every time they come here. And so what we're doing on Saturday, if you come Saturday, if you come Sunday 9 or 11, or if you come Wednesday night, we're still doing the same bottom line, the same what's up, or whatever we call it. It changes depending on what curriculum is, but it's that they're learning that throughout the entire week, because most kids, average attendance for adult right now is once a month. So if it's not once a month, then oh, you are on fire because you came twice this month. That's amazing, okay? And so we get so little time with them. Our service is about an hour long, so we get on average for each kid an hour long in service. That's how long we have to invest in a child. But just school alone is 30 hours. And that's if they just go beginning to end. That's not count if they go to breakfast or they go to aftercare. And so the schools have so much more time, and parents have so much more time with their kids because you have every other time in between. You have more time, a parent will have more time with their kids in a week than we will as church leaders in an entire year. And so it's important that we continue to say the same message, and we help to support the parents so that the parents learn also what we're saying. So when we lead, we lead small. So the old way we used to do church was that we taught large classes in small group, and then we taught an even larger group of kids. We may have known a few who were there, but what we do for a few will always have more potential than what we do for the many. Think about your life as growing up as a Christian, or just growing up as a person. Was there more impact in your life from a particular person, a teacher, a coach, a small group, a Sunday school teacher, a pastor, someone speaking into your life, or was it in a giant room full of 50 people and someone standing down on the stage? For most of you, I would probably say that it has to do with that one-on-one thing. So what we do for a few will always have more potential than what we do for many. So the kids love to hear their name spoken in love. They love to have a person that is their person that they can identify with. And it's no longer a look at the leader of many. It's a look at the leader of the few. Like when we do Vacation Bible School. When we do Vacation Bible School, there's 2 leaders, and sometimes there's 4 leaders for 20 kids. Okay, so then that's a leader for about every 5 kids. That's awesome, because now that they have much more connection with them, as opposed to what we do at 11 o'clock, where there were 3 leaders for 50 kids. So just for easy math, let's round up to 60. That means for 20 kids, I'm responsible for, and 20 kids it's almost impossible to handle. And y'all are seeing this in your Sunday school classes right now. You got 15, 20 kids in there. It's difficult to know each one. If you're SGL, that's small group leader. So anytime you see SGL, that's what that is. So if you see SGL, it's just as important that you know that you're not, that you know what you are not, as it is to know what you are. So when you lead small, you simply make a choice to invest strategically in the lives of a few over time, so that you can help them build an authentic faith. And so what we're asking you to do as small group leaders is, a lot of you have been serving for a long time, and you will be continue to serving for a long time. But the goal is, especially with a church this size, but what we're going to look for is that you work with a group of kids for 1 year. That you do that for 1 year, because in elementary ages, the stages change, and you can invest a lot in a 7-year-old. And there's a lot of difference between a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old. And so we can invest in that difference in there for a year. This strategy goes all the way up to high school. And so with middle school, they suggest that you do for 3 years. And in high school, they suggest you do for 4 years. That's not something Tia and Levi are doing, but I'm working on them. Don't tell them or them. Don't tell them. All right. So that's what we're working for, because again, that investment is so very important. Jesus illustrated community. Jesus illustrated community with his disciples. He had his 12, and then out of his 12 he had his 3, and then out of his 3 he had his 1. And so he was constantly living in community, and the church practiced that community over and over again. And so we're just continuing on what the early church did. How important it's important for us to get our kids in community as early and as often as possible, because what we do know is that people are leaving the church. 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, they are leaving the church like crazy. There's some crazy statistic that says that most kids lose their religion within the first 2 weeks of college. And so the reason most kids lose at college when they leave is because when they leave this community, if they decide to go to UF or UCF or somewhere even further away, they decide to go to those places, what they've lost is their community. And if we don't teach them at this age that community is important and has an impact in their lives, then when they go to college, they won't be looking for a God community. They'll find another community. They'll find something else to be a part of. And a lot of times that leads away from the Lord. Not from atheistic philosophy, but just because of apathy. It's not important to their lives at the time, and so they don't do it. And so what we want to do is we want to teach them here at an early age. What we do is so important because we're laying the foundations for what their future. So for Thessalonians 2:8 says, "So we cared for you because we loved you so much. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well." It's important for us to tell people about Jesus, but we also have to tell them how much we love them. Jesus said, what good is it to say, I love you, and you have 2 coats and you don't give them 1? And it's the same idea as that we're part of a community. We tell them we love them, but we're also going to invest our time with them. So this brings us to the 5 elements of leading small. And so, got ahead of myself there. And so this brings us to the 5 elements of leading small. And we'll show what that is, but I'm just going to give you an overview. They're be present, create a safe place, partner with parents, make it personal, and then move them out. So the first one is be present. And so what we have to do is we have to connect their faith to a community. And what that means is that you are here. That's why I've asked you to come every week. If you can't come every week, come every other week, that you're there on a consistent basis, that you can have an investment in them. If you only come once a month and another kid only comes once a month, then it's very possible that you'll miss them because you work on second Sunday and they only come on third. And so that's because we got a lot of kids who come like their grandparents bring them, or they come so irregularly, and so we don't necessarily have an opportunity to preach into them. Also, I was talking to a small group leader, and he was working twice a month, and he said, I've been doing this for a while. I don't really feel the connection with the kids. Why can't I just go down to 1 Sunday a month? And I said, think about what happens. If you go down to 1 Sunday a month and you have a relationship with that kid, and that kid's dog dies, and you're not working that week, and then for some reason you miss your week, so then you don't see him, and you don't show up till like the next month. And so now it's been 2 months that this kid that you've invested in, the dog died, may still have an impact on him, but probably not. And you didn't have an opportunity to have an investment in that kid. And so that's why we want you to be there. So we show this. The symbol that they use for this is a circle, and the big orange circle is you, and the little white circle are your few. That's when I say your few, I'm referring to your small group, your kids that you invest in. And I'm not talking about these wayward kids. Like I had some kids show up, and the last time they were here about 6 months ago. I'm not talking about those kids. I'm talking about the kids who are here every single week. And I'm sure you're thinking about, exactly who I'm talking about. Those kids that we see on a regular basis. So as a small group leader, what we have to do is we have to show up predictably. We need to be there when we say we're going to be there and communicate with them when they're not. I heard a small group leader who led middle school group, and she missed a week. And then that one of the girls in her small group missed a week, and then so they met back up on the 3rd week. And the girl said, "How can I ever talk to you? You're never here." And I was like, "It's been 2 weeks. What are you talking about?" And so we don't run into that a lot. You will with the older girls and the older boys, but the point is that we have to be present. And if you're not going to be here the next week, and you're not going to be here the next week, go ahead and tell the kids. That way they know, like, hey, here's who's the next person that's going to be here, so that they know that you're there, and it can be predictable that you're going to be there. The second one is to show up mentally. The time we spend with our few is valuable, and we need to come prepared mentally and spiritually for our group. It's super difficult. We got kids in ball games all over the weekend, and we've been busy, and you didn't get your curriculum until Friday, and then you show up on Sunday morning, and it's the first time you're looking at it, and you're just not ready for the kids. And so what we have to do is we have to work to be mentally prepared for those kids. And that's why one of the things I try to do is get you the curriculum as far out as possible. So the rest of this series is already available, even though you can access it once I've given you the invitation. You can access that curriculum so you can see it, so you can be mentally prepared. And I know things happen in your life. Sometimes you have that argument on Sunday morning in the car, and you're just not ready to love Jesus because that kid is just, but we have to put ourselves in the place. That's one of the reasons why we do worship. And even though Can't Contain It is very difficult to contain our dance moves as we go through it, because it's a super hard song. Super fun. It's fun. Christina, man, you were rocking. I got to get you up there. All right. So we're doing that, but we still take the time. Worship, even if it's a fun song, it's still, that's why we don't, I think I'm going to throw up my hands and praise the Lord. We're going to still take the time. Y'all don't remember that song? It's classic. Don't get me started on Pick Your Nose. That was also a good one. But that's not, where you want to get in the right frame of mind, and sometimes worship, just praising the Lord in one song, will help and get you back centered and focused. The other one is show up randomly. It's not a bad thing to show up at one of your few's birthday party or a ball game. It communicates to them that you care and you're there for them. This is one of the biggest things I've gotten a pushback on, is showing up randomly. I got my own kids. I got my own stuff to do. How can I show up at these kids' things? Well, if the kid gives you a birthday invitation, see if you can come make it. I'm not saying you have to do it. If the kid says, I got this big game, and you, for some reason, decide to show up, that's great. Just have an opportunity. If you see an opportunity, take that opportunity, because then it shows that you care. I know when I was doing, I run into this a lot after Vacation Bible School. I show up at like the grocery store, and then a kid sees me like in the grocery store, and they're like, oh, as I walk back, they're so shocked, like, oh my gosh, he's there. It's like they've seen a Yeti. They're like, what's happening? Okay, but when you show up to them, it's like, oh, they really do care, because they were there for me, and they care about me. Like if a kid ends up in the hospital, it was like, I'll go see them in the hospital, but it would also mean something if you went to go visit them in the hospital as well. Show up randomly so that we don't do that. The second one is create a safe place. Create a safe place. One of my teachers, when I was in education school, she did diversity in education. And what she did is she took a piece of paper before all of her classes, and she'd been an educator for like 30 years. She grew up at Ybor, great story. But anyway, she would take the paper and she'd write safe place on it, and then she'd tape it to the board. And she'd say, this is a safe place. If you need to share something, if you need to talk about something, this is not a place where we're going to ridicule you. This is not a place where we're going to criticize you. This is a place where you belong, and this is a place that you can share. And so I've done that before in my small groups. I've done it when I've taught my 5th and 6th grade leadership team, that this is a place where you can be open and you can be honest about it. Because sometimes kids are going to be afraid to share because they're afraid of what others might think of them. And so we have to create an environment where they can share and they can talk about what's really going on in them. As that symbol is shown, see the circle is darker in, because this is like a fortress. You're put in here. It's kind of like what happens in group stays in group. They're safe in there. As our kids grow, they'll have questions about faith, about the Bible. What we do is we provide a place where those questions can be answered. Sometimes these kids are dealing with deep philosophical and theological questions, even in first grade. But we can help answer them. They need to feel that it's a safe place to do this. We create a safe place by leading our group. So we shut down the kids who are making fun of others. When one kid's getting bullied, we shut it down, and it's a lot easier to do that because you only have like 5 to 8 kids in your group, and so it's a lot easier to shut it down. If the kid's picking on another kid in large group, there's 50 kids in there. It's very hard. I may miss it completely because it's hard to see what's going on. But we shut it down because we create a safe place. We encourage questions and remove distractions when possible. I give them lots of coins. And then they come in there and they're playing with the coins. Hey, why don't I hold on to that for you? They got their buddy barrel and they're like doing flips with it. I was like, hey, why don't I hold on to that for you, okay? You remove distractions because this is a point where we focus. And this is a point where we encourage questions and we remove the distractions. The second thing is we respect the process. Kids won't understand everything all at once. All of you have been our parents in here. You understand this. When Caleb asks me a question at 4, I sometimes I ask him. When he asks me a question, I said, "Okay, do you want the short answer or do you want the really long, truthful answer?" And normally he wants the short answer, but eventually, especially when he's like, "Why does it rain?" he's going to want the longer answer eventually. And so I will tell him that, but I give him what a kid will do is when they ask a question, you don't have to give them every single nuanced detail. You just give them some. And if they ask another question, they want to go deeper. If they ask another question, they want to go deeper. And if they want to ask another question, then they want to go deeper. But sometimes that won't all happen at once. They'll ask a question, you answer it, and they may come back 2 weeks later, and it's like off the wall. Like, where did that come from? And they've been processing and thinking through what you're doing. And so what we have to do is we have to respect the process. We need to keep in mind that we hold certain things back because their faith and maturity is not quite ready for it. Like the story of David and Bathsheba. I was so offended when I was 17 years old and I found out this story. And like David was like, I'm David. King David's like my hero. It's like, why did no one tell me about this? Okay? Well, for good reason. All right? We don't tell this story. I was so shocked. There's a VeggieTales episode that covers David and Bathsheba. And it's Larry the Cucumber, Junior Asparagus singing about his duck. Or maybe it was Larry the Cucumber. It was one of the two. Larry the Cucumber was playing King David. Asparagus was Uriah. And the duck with the Bathsheba. And it's like, they're doing this story of David and Bathsheba. Check them out. So they were just being envious over a rubber ducky as they took a bath. But we don't tell that story, okay? We don't get into the nitty-gritty, violent. I mean, there's some violent stories in the Bible, guys. We don't talk about that stuff because they're not ready. Now, one of the things I did, I love y'all who like kindergarten, first grader. God bless you. Okay, I'm all about 4th and 5th graders and a little older. That's what I like, because what I'll do is I'll tell them, like we did the prodigal son story. Well, I skipped the older brother, and so once I finished the story, I had 2 or 3 5th graders raise their hand. I was like, what happened to the older brother? They wanted to know. And so I say, hey, if you want to know what happened to the older brother, y'all come down here, I'll tell you. And I was surrounded by 5th graders because they wanted to know the rest of the story. And so sometimes when we tell the story, we will limit it. We will hold back some of that stuff. But there may be, especially if we're working older kids, it's like, well, let me show you just a little bit more. Let me go a little bit deeper with the story. The third thing is guard their heart. Sometimes when a kid comes with a question, they are extremely vulnerable. What you say to them could have a lasting impact on their lives. There was a family of 7 at my last church. And the oldest girl, she was 13, so she had grown up in the ministry. She'd been a leader. She was part of my leadership group. She started like telling the story in big church. She'd been doing that for, not in big church, in kids church for a year or so. She'd been doing a great job. But her younger sister, who was just 2 years younger, had just as much charisma and just as much potential and leadership ability as her older sister. But the problem was, like, you talk about middle child. What happens when you're the second of 7? You're lost. And so one of the things I said to her before I left, I said, look, do not live your life, feel like you have to live your life in the shadow of your sister. You have the ability to do just as much and be just as impactful as your older sister can, and you can do that. And I could sell her being, her just countenance just lifted up because and it was like, I believe in you that you can do this. And it was like, forget what Grace is doing. Let's focus on you and how you can work and how you can make an impact. And so when kids ask a question, and that will happen in small groups, sometimes it won't happen when you're just doing discussion time. It'll happen like, okay, let's go back to class, and they're all running off the launch pad, but you have that one kid that hangs back and wants to ask a question, or that one kid that wants to ask a question and do that. So guard their hearts. Guard their hearts and speak in love. You defend them when others bully them and encourage them and stand up for what's right. I had a kid in one of my first grade classes. He would cry at the drop of a hat. He didn't get picked for like question and answer time. Boo-hoo. And I'd be like, and kids would like make fun of him. And I was like, dude, and I was like, stop it. Quit making fun of him. But I also told the kid, like, dude, you got to get it together. All right? You're not going to make it if you keep crying just because you didn't get picked. So I'm protecting him because I'm not letting the other older kids pick on him. But at the same time, like, I'm helping him. Like, hey, let's have some gusto about you, okay? That's no cry. And it's just difficult. There's kids, lots of kids who have feelings. All right, the third one. Justin liked that one. Third one, partner with parents. Partner with parents. Now, with our current model, this is a little difficult to do because the way it goes, that they all get dropped off in the launch pad, and y'all are back in the launch pad, or y'all getting things ready, and then y'all take them, and then you bring them back in the launch pad, and parents come pick them up, and y'all may never, ever see a parent. Okay? That's super difficult to do with our current model, but it is possible to do it. We just have to be intentional about how to do it. Our parents have the best opportunity to teach your few about faith, and they have significantly more time with them than we will ever have. And I talked about that before. And we showed this with the house outside. Because the few are outside of us, and the things that we teach are reinforced at home. That's why I give home that family devotional. Most of them may never make it out of the family van, but that's okay. That's why I give home the family devotional. That's why I send out the emails. That's why I post on Facebook, because I'm trying to provide ways to reinforce what we're already teaching at home, and that we do those things. So what the three ways we can do that is that we cue the parents with family devotionals, and we talked about that. The second thing is we honor the parents by notifying them when the kids makes a major decision. Last week, I gave the kids an opportunity to accept Jesus as their Savior. Okay, and on Saturday night, I had 2 kids do it. On Wednesday night, I had 4 kids do it. We're not sure how many did it on Sunday at 11. But one of the things I ask the kids to do whenever I give a salvation call or something big milestone happens, I say, I want you to tell 2 people. I want you to tell a leader, and I want you to tell your parents. Because it's important that we celebrate it, but that parent wants to know. And so one of the things that I did is that as those parents, I made sure I was at check-in instead of hanging out on the launch pad. And when that parent came to pick up that kid, I went to that parent and said, hey, I don't know if you want to follow up with them or not, but I gave an opportunity for them to accept Christ, and they raised their hand. I was the king. But it wasn't about me. They were super excited about their kids and what had happened in their lives. And so it's important that we partner with the parents, tell them when those things happen. So you point, and sometimes kids will ask questions. This is a funny story. I was doing a small group. It was 4th and 5th grade boys. We were talking about different types of sin. And I said, what is a sin? And one kid said, rape. And I'm like, what do I do? I was like, I can't believe you just said rape. Oh my gosh, I was looking for lying. Thank you. And he said rape. What do I do? And then another kid, younger kid, said, what's rape? Now we've opened a can of worms. Turned out nobody except that kid knew what rape was. All right. So instead of me going to a whole conversation with the birds and the bees, which is not appropriate, I said, you know what, guys? You're going to have to ask your parents. Y'all are going to have a talk with your parents and ask them what it was. And then I went to the parents and said, this is what happened. And then that afternoon, little Timmy grew up a little bit. So, but that kind of stuff happens. So in our model, like if something big happened in there, don't go to Launchpad. Come talk to the parents. You have that freedom to come and talk to the parent and say what it is, or tell me and I'll tell the parent. But I want you to be the hero more than me being the hero, because everyone is the hero of their own story, and we are just guiding them and helping them along the way. So and the other thing is always support the parents with their decisions. I don't have to worry about this with y'all as much, but when I have like teenagers in there, sometimes parent will pass a punishment and the teenager would be like, I can't believe they did that. And I was like, not supporting the parents. As a parent, you would hate that. Well, my small group leader said, you made the wrong decision. It's like, okay. We've lost that small group leader. All right. And so you always support the parents in the decisions, even if it's questionable. Well, support the parent to the kid, and then talk to me or talk to the parent. Let's have a conversation about what's happening. Okay. We enforce the family by talking about family dynamics. We encourage obedience and honoring of the parents. If your mom asks you to do that, well, then that's what you need to do. And then by giving example of God's relationship with them through the family. That God, whenever I talk about God's love, I always relate it to the parents. How much does your mama love you? God loves you more. That gives them some handles to grab hold of, and something for them to understand. Okay, so that is partner with parents. The fourth one is make it personal. Make it personal. If we don't live this out, kids will find out. So when we come up to a time where it's time to tell a personal story, share a personal story. It needs to be age appropriate. Don't get on to the nitty gritty details of your sin failing. But if you have a personal story to tell, then tell them. I do this a lot on Wednesday nights when I'm talking about when we did the whole God Speaks thing. Of I told kids stories about when God spoke to me, and it added so much more depth, because now it's not some dude in the Bible, it's Pastor David who's standing in front of me. God can speak in there. So this one is shown just by you. Because this centers on you. So when you hear a story, or your job is about application. And so when you talk about things, how can this apply? How does this apply to my life? How do I live this out? We talked today about real life and how that relates to legalism. Well, how does Jesus give you real life? And then you talk about that application to the kids. That way it's not this abstract thing out there. It's you. It's something that you're living out. You should be part, and so what we want you to do is we want you to be a part of a small group somewhere. Be a part of a community. We're all busy, we got busy lives and all that thing, but if you can figure out how to be a part of the community, we want you to be part of the community. This can be a community, but also if this doesn't feel like community, then find a group that is. Now, I'm not currently part of a group right now, but I usually try, if I'm not leading one, I try to be a part of one. It's just my current stage of life of trying to get this off the ground and start a new job. It just wasn't a good place for me. But we want you to be a part of a group somewhere. You should set your priorities that mirrors what we want our kids to have and grow up with. So your priorities are like God, family, work, and church. That these are the things that are important to you. These are things that I want my kids to have. So these are the priorities that I live out. And this is why I talk to you a lot of times, is that I want you to attend church once a week. To attend one church service. Like Ruth, she served at 9 and 11. That's awesome. So she went to church on Saturday night because she wanted to get it in, all right? So it's important that you attend service, okay? I try to attend. I don't really make it into service, but I'm listening to it on the podcast. I'm doing something to make sure that I get fed along with everything else. And then it's important. You are part of this church body. And so that's great that you love Stephen Furtick and you love Chris Hodges and Andy Stanley, but you got to listen to Scott Young too, because that's his heart and that's where he's leading us. So and get it in, be a part of the service. Finally, be real. Don't make up a story. They're gonna know, okay? They're gonna know. And if you are gonna tell a fake story, then tell them it's a fake story right up front. That way they're not trying to what? Okay, tell them a fake story. I did the story of Prodigal Son, and I let them pick out the names. Because Prodigal Son just says the father and the older brother and younger brother. Well, I named them George, Jorge, and Paco. And it's just like, whoa! They were just super excited about it. Why? Because it's a made-up story. We don't know if that really happened. Jesus didn't tell us their names, but hey, let's throw some names in there. So if you're going to tell them, don't be fake in your stories, but don't be afraid to admit your mistakes, as long as they're appropriate, okay? Don't get in there. The kids will value your truthfulness, and they'll trust you even more. It lets them know that you don't have it all together, that it's so easy for us as Christians, especially as leaders, to say, hey, I got it all together. I have no issues. Well, that's not true. Deep down, that's not true. And so it's appropriate to share age appropriately what those are, okay? All right, last one. Move them out. Finally, move them out. It's not enough to just be the church. We have to be the church. We have to show them how they engage their faith in the bigger story. So we show this by having the circle, and you and the kids are out of it, okay? You and your few are out of it. So we should move them to share their faith with others. That's why we're doing this invite challenge. I bought 9 canisters of candy thinking that would last me at least 2 weeks. I was one short, okay? Because kids brought their friends. They brought their cousins, but they brought their friends. They brought their people who don't normally go here. They brought them. And so we want them to tell other people about Jesus. VBS will do things to say, hey, bring your friends to VBS, and then we'll have extra incentives. That's an awful word. Incentives for if you come to VBS, if you bring those friends back on Sunday, you'll get even more. Okay? We want to have those things to show them, and we do this to show them that they can engage their faith in a bigger story. It's not all about you. It's about the world at large and about saving the world. So we show this both with a few outside, and we did that. We should move them by sharing I lost my place. I'm sorry. We should move them to being the church, to being active members and not just passive listeners. What is that phrase? You should. We're not there yet. There you go. I got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. We should move them out. We should let them help with their transitions in life and ultimately let them go when it's time. Here's what move them out means. Sometimes there are going to be service projects they're going to be part of, like when they did the Christmas boxes for that. We're going to have the kids make Christmas boxes to help be a part of it. And then we're even going to invite some of them and some of you to go help give it. Go be a part of that. I might do, like in the years past I've done caroling, so we might go over to Fountains and go sing caroling. And go caroling with them. We may not do that on a Sunday, that's more of a Wednesday night thing, but we'll do those things. So there will be certain service projects that we want the kids to be. Silly string. It's all about telling people about Jesus. Yeah, they're going to have a great time spraying silly string, and I'm going to be picking silly string out of my teeth for a week. But it's about raising, it's gross. It's metallic. Ugh. And, but it's about telling them, it's about you being a part of a mission, that you are a part of a bigger story. My phone locked. All right. So that's the phrase. You should start packing a student's bag the day he or she shows up. I like to say this, when I transition, we're going to transition everybody on the August 4th will be their last weekend with us before we move everyone up. And I like to use the phrase, that's when I kick them out of the nest. Because what happens is 6th graders like to keep coming back, and that's great, but you're going to have to serve. You're not coming to be a part of what we're doing. So I kick them out of the nest. Because kids love what they're doing. They love to be a part of this, and some of them are not ready to go. Well, sorry. That's why Mama Bird kicks them out of the nest to see if they're going to fly. And if they don't, well, So, that's what what we want to do is we want to prepare them. There's going to come a time where they're no longer with you. And so you want to start preparing them for when that time comes, so that they're ready to be part of a bigger story. That's why we teach them the theology. We teach them apologetics as much as a 7-year-old can understand. We start teaching them as much as they can, so that when they do leave, that they're ready. And because the whole goal, the reason why we're doing any of this is to develop an authentic faith in a kid's life that will last a lifetime. If a kid becomes your age and is still loving Jesus, and their worst sinful days is they took a drink one time. That was if that's the worst thing ever, that's a win. Because they're telling people about Jesus, they live their life. I don't want them to be another statistic that they become a nun, where not a nun like Catholic nun, a nun as in they have no religion. And a lot of those people have no religion because they don't care. They're literally apathetic about what's in. And so what we want to do is develop that faith that lasts a lifetime. And so this is why we lead small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each one of you a book. I promised a book. Yeah. So this is a lead small book, okay? And so it talks all about, I'm just going to give one to the Lahans. Y'all can come get the other one. It's going to take me forever, all right? So this book covers the big ideas. This book covers basically these 5 principles that I just talked about. And it helps you put more handles on what we're doing and how we're going to accomplish this. So one thing that I will do, if you're not a member of the Facebook group, let me know. I'll send you an invite via email. So you can be a part of that group. Because what we'll do is there's actually a study guide. So we'll read a chapter a week as we go through this, and I'll ask discussion questions, and we can post on the group of what those groups are. And Aber Darby, who's just a greeter, will be like, "What are y'all doing?" But the point is that we want that we all read this together, and that we're all on the same page. It's been years since I read this book, so it'll benefit me as well to read that. So, and as I read that, it totally changed the way I approach my group. It became more of it. I was like, "Oh, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing." And why it's so important that we do that, okay? I covered a lot of information, and I am way over time. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right, that was a lot of them. If you have other questions, if you have your meeting after a meeting with your spouse, and then shoot me an email. Ask questions. I won't get mad at you to your face. But, see how we can do. One of the things that I would like to try to do is that this last year's snow slide was not that great. We had a whole bunch of kids come out, but it cost a lot of money to put off, and I'm not sure if a lot of connection happened. So one thing that I would like to try to do is in January, instead of doing snow slide, what I'd like to do is that we do a small group community event where all my small group leaders, and it won't be just you, I'll have groups at 11 and Saturday by that point, is that kids who are part of a group, and it's like, y'all put together a thing. And then if I need to give you money to help make that happen, then we'll help make that happen. Whether it's a party at your house, y'all go bowling, y'all go mini golf, something that y'all do with your few. And we do it like on a weekend. And so everyone, and then they can invite their friends to come be a part of it. However that looks like, and we'll flesh that more out because that's 9 months away. But that I would like to try to do something like that as opposed to a snow slide. Because Sarasota Baptist, their snow slide put ours to shame, okay? And so I just don't want to play that game. But what I do want to play the game is let's build relationships with our kids, and let's make a moment and a memory that matters. Something that they look back on and say, remember when we did that with my group? That's great. There was a Sunday school teacher when I was in second grade. At the end of the year, she threw a pool party. And I remember there was only like 7 of us out of the 15 that came, but she had a slide. It was the first pool I ever went to a slide. But this was second grade. I don't remember the teacher's name. I barely even remember what she looks like, but I remember the impact she made because of the pool party that she had. And so there are times where we can do things to make memories so that we can all lead small. All right? Let me pray, and then you'll be dismissed. Father God, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to lead small. Thank you for the children that we have and for the children that are coming. God, I ask that you prepare their hearts and minds for what you're going to do and the changes, the opportunity we have to plant the seeds. God, I pray that it grow and that we develop an authentic faith in these kids' lives through you working through us that will last a lifetime. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you all.
Are we starting reading this next week?
Jenna, do you need
Yeah.